With trauma in general and abuse in particular we're talking about, there's a real sense of powerlessness. And that's normal. That's normal. And especially in abuse where so many of your choices have been taken away. So God sees you and He cares and He is faithful. And then try and find support. Find your people, find your person. I remember telling the elder one time, I wish he just hit me. And the elder said, oh, because that would heal easier? And I said, well, it would, but no, because then you'd believe me.
Yeah.
And of course they said they believed me, but I thought, then you'll do something.
Yeah. Welcome back, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you're sharing in the first two episodes, and I'm excited about this just because so many people need to hear this part of it, just like the others. But this, what do you do if you're in that situation? How do you get safe? So we're going to start there today, and let's do the first question. What are some of the reasons that an abused spouse doesn't seek help? Obviously, there are a lot of reasons that we've talked about for you. What in general do you see?
Yeah, I've seen before a list of 100 different reasons, literally. But just in culling some of them down, especially in looking in a lot of faith-based circles and stuff. One is the fear of not being believed. That's really significant, especially if he looks great at church or somewhere else. If he looks good somewhere else, then you're really afraid you're not going to be believed, and that's devastating, right?
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, oh yes. Another is your kids. Doesn't matter what age they are. Most of us we've been trying to protect our family.
Sure.
Our whole life, really, our whole married life, and so you don't know what kind of effect it's going to have on them. There are literally studies that show the high percentage of women who do not leave abusive relationships because of their pets, even.
Really?
Yeah. So I just want to throw that out there because that's interesting. It's because you don't think about everything, and here part of what I want to show on that is we're loving, compassionate women, who care about the people and animals and everything in our life. And we want everyone around us cared for, probably to our own detriment at different times. But other reasons you don't leave, your own doctrine would be a biggie. That was certainly a huge thing for me. Shame. There's a lot of shame involved. And even in going and telling someone, there's a lot of shame involved. Even when you get to the point where you're like, this wasn't my fault, that's a whole other hurdle still, though, that you have to get over.
It is, isn't it?
Is the shame. A lot of fear. I have been amazed as I've done more of my own personal work over the last few years, how fear-based I am. And it's insidious. But a lot of it's valid. Fear about the future.
Oh, it makes so much sense.
Fear about finances. How am I going to support myself?
Right.
For me, I'm 59. I've got to support myself the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Those are valid questions. How am I going to do this? How are the people around me going to respond? What are all the things I'm going to lose in this? Because there are going to be a ton of losses in this. And then fear of them.
Sure.
Fear of retribution. Those are significant. Also, there's a psychological concept. I don't like the name of it, but it's called learned helplessness. My therapist has renamed it for me, conditioned helplessness.
Okay, that's nice. Which makes actually a little more sense, I think.
Yes, because learned, I think, can give you the idea that I chose to learn this.
Right.
I did not choose to learn this. But if you just Google learned helplessness and you see how the studies that they did and stuff, the essence of it is you do everything you can to not get shocked or try and resolve whatever, and nothing works.
Yeah.
So learned helplessness. It's like nothing I do affects change, so we're done.
Yeah.
With trauma in general and abuse in particular we're talking about, there's a real sense of powerlessness. And that's normal. That's normal. And especially in abuse where so many of your choices have been taken away, whether by them making all the decisions for you, or you just know so I picked this, and I'm watching your reaction. No, I meant this one. This is what I meant. I'm watching for how you're going to respond. And so the idea that I have choice, that's a new thing. So the powerlessness is a big piece. And
absolutely,
the diminishment of your own personhood, which I tell women all the time, that is an intention of abuse. It's not a byproduct. They're intentionally trying to diminish you, it's interesting because when I learned that as I began to really study abuse, that was what went back to the licensed counselor who had been so meaningful to me, who had said, I see right through him, said he has a need to demean, diminish, and destroy you.
Yeah.
And the diminishment, so you don't know what's going on. There's real crazy making. You're not sure which ends up even at times. And you definitely don't know who you are. You've been made, that's kind of fair. For your own safety, you've been made to be very small. And that's the way I tend to say it with women a lot of times is, are there relationships in your life where you have to be very small? And invariably people know exactly what I'm describing by that feeling. So none of those things are going to make you, it takes a lot of courage to tell your story and to reach out. And all those things are going to work against you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and I agree. I love the things that you said because I think I can identify with every one of them with people that I've worked with, and especially just someone that I'm the first one they tell their story to, and the fact that I believe them. It is like you can just see it's like a weight lifts off of them.
Yeah, you can exhale. Oh my God,
because they didn't know.
Yeah,
is he going to tell me something different, or it's my fault, or what do you mean? I know your husband, I don't usually, but anything like that, things that they'll hear, well, that couldn't be that person. Yeah, that's so powerful. And to understand those things, and then other reasons that I'm sure are just for that person and they happen to be in the situation that they're in. But I think kids, all those things that you mentioned are things I hear. That, and the fear of, how many of the women I've worked with were stay-at-home moms. And they didn't have income, and it's really scary to think what's going to happen.
What am I going to do? And you've lost years of experience in the workforce, which means it's harder to find a job. You're probably coming in an entry-level job. You don't have 10, 20, 30 years of accrued PTO, of pay raises, all those kinds of things. So it's a completely different game.
Absolutely.
For you. They can go on, assuming they've been working and you haven't, and in some cases you have been working too. But in other cases, they've been working and you haven't, or you put your career kind of on the sidelines for a time. So there's this huge gap. So they can go on and make a good living, and they've got, again, all the PTO, all the things that come with that. And you're starting from scratch.
You're at ground zero.
Yeah, it's
with all that stuff.
Yeah, it's mildly terrifying.
So a person in that position, do they trust their own decision making?
No.
At all?
No, that's still kind of a thing for me, that it can still be a little tricky in making decisions. Now, if I'm in a business, if I'm working with you professionally,
no problem.
I'm all in. Yeah, I can lead, I can make decisions, I can do stuff really effectively. I've done event planning before. I'm great on the fly, problem solving, all that. But you get me at home, and I can really start second guessing myself quickly. So you don't, and that's a piece of it. That was one of the podcasts that I listened to that was so meaningful to me, was he talked about confusion. And that's a hallmark of an unsafe relationship, and that you're being manipulated.
Yeah.
And a lot of the experts refer to it as crazy making. And so you don't know, because one of the things on the power and control wheel is the minimizing, denying, justifying. And so they're telling you either it's not abuse or it's not that big a deal. You're making too much of it.
Sure.
You don't remember correctly. Gaslighting. I know that's a word that's been thrown around a lot in our culture. It is very much a real thing of making you doubt your own reality.
Absolutely.
I didn't say that. You're like, I swear you said that.
But you begin to doubt it.
Oh my
and
goodness.
Question it.
Oh, 100%. Yes. And even like with the example of affecting your decisions, if you were to say, I knew I need to make this decision because of you, I wouldn't care. You're like, I think you would care. You know, then suddenly I'm like very confused because I know if I made the wrong choice, there would have been a reaction.
Right.
So
then that confuses it more.
Oh, yes. So no, you do not.
You just don't trust your decision making because it's been just chipped away. It just kind of chips away at it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
And yeah, chips away at your decision making, your ability to make decisions, chips away at your personhood, your identity, everything. And so it makes you doubt, everything.
I know. I had a lady I worked with years ago, and she had told me that, you know, most of that morning before she came in, she was curled up a ball in her closet. And she literally looked that way when she came in. She was so defeated, so beat down, so not trusting, you know, that she could, you know, scared that she was really coming in to counseling because she didn't know where that was gonna lead.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And then over time to be able to see her healed.
Yeah.
You know, over the years after that. And to see, I always think in situations like that, I wish I would take a picture of the person day one and then have another picture down the line once God's really worked in their life. They don't even look like the same person.
Yeah.
They don't even look like the same person. So somebody today that's listening, watching, who's really identified what we're talking about, and they're really suffering abuse in their marriage today, what would you tell them?
Well, first off, that God sees you.
Oh, that's good.
You know, the story where God revealed himself as the God who sees was to an abused woman. So God sees you and he cares, and he is faithful. And then try and find support. Find your people, find your person. I've seen people who've gone through it before alone, although they found an attorney or someone who believed them, who at least helped them further the situation. But it's so much better and easier with someone. And it's funny, the people that God uses in that situation, who he brings back around. So it may not be who you were thinking it would be. And in fact, that's a real point of grief, is that some of the people you really thought would be there with you are not there with you.
That's hard.
Oh, that's devastating. I mean, it really is. It feels like a betrayal.
Yeah.
But to just pray for someone, and then as you're testing the water, it could be somebody at work, you know, it could be a friend at church, it could be a relative, someone, you know, and you don't go and just tell your whole story. And well, how did they respond? Well, they were probably terrified. You know.
You just threw up all over
Exactly.
them, right?
But you can leak out little pieces and see how they respond.
Yeah, just kind of test the water a little bit.
Completely.
Because you need to know, you definitely want someone that's safe.
Yes.
And you need to know that they are safe.
Yeah.
So a little bit at a time can help.
Very much. And if there is physical abuse and you are in imminent danger, the National Abuse Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. And so whatever state you're in, you can reach out. That's the national number, and they can connect you hopefully with some more local resources.
Right.
If you're here in the Oklahoma City area, especially if there's physical abuse, Palomar is excellent. And I work with Palomar, and we provide wraparound services to victims of domestic violence. And so we can help with legal issues, VPOs, everything. Food, housing, safety, all those kinds of things. You may not qualify for our resources, but it's a place to start and to see.
Yeah, I think so. And I would think that there's other cities that have that. And I think
Yes.
you're right. Find out what you're saying, find out what the resources are where you live.
Yes.
And if you live in a rural area or something, you've got the hotline.
You got the
can
hotline.
contact them and see what they say. They'll know something you may not know.
Yeah, and there's so much available now on the internet
Yes.
that in the idea of getting support, I know it's better if you could have somebody there with you, but there is a support available online. There are some wonderful organizations, Christian organizations, that are specifically geared for women who are in abusive marriages or relationships. Some for women who are trying to stay well, meaning stay in the relationship in a godly way, stay well. Some who are moving toward getting out, some who have gotten out. Mm-hmm. So there are things that are available out there, and I would really encourage that. I had done that initially when I made the move. I had gotten in an online organization where you just keep hearing, okay, so there's hundreds or thousands, depending on what group you're in, of Christian women like me.
Yeah.
And it's like, because abuse is incredibly isolating. Part of that's on purpose.
Absolutely.
But it is a very lonely feeling, even if you have friends. I have had the most amazing friends, and there have been times of devastating loneliness. That's just the reality of it. Mm-hmm. But if you are truly alone, then finding some community online can be really meaningful and life-giving.
Absolutely. There's groups, there's all kinds of resources
and there
there.
may be there's some churches that have care series, care groups
Sure.
that are geared towards that. Not as many as there need to be.
Well, and I think it is, if 1 week in church the pastor asked every woman that had been abused to stand up, I think people would be shocked.
Oh, yeah, I know the statistic on that. Yes, you'd be
It's high.
astounded.
And so the church is not always our safe place.
No.
At all, as we talked about in other episodes.
Yes.
Like this, yeah. No, that's really good. So it's really finding somebody to help you take those steps, mm-hmm. or to come around alongside you to start with.
Yes.
And how important that is. In your situation, was there physical abuse?
No.
And I think that's something that people have to understand. Is the physical abuse is real easy. You got bruises, you go somewhere, you're going to be protected. But if they're inside, if they're emotional, those are every bit as devastating, and a lot of times worse.
Oh, yeah, and that's what they will, even women who are physically abused will say, but it was the things he said to me.
Yep, absolutely.
That hurt so much. I remember telling the elder one time, I wish he just hit me. And the elder said, oh, because that would heal easier? And I said, well, it would, but no, because then you'd believe me.
Yeah.
And of course they said they believed me, but I thought, then you'll do something.
Yeah, if you got emotional scars that showed up somewhere.
And some of the really strong literature out there now, and the studies out there now, show the physical effects of emotional abuse and verbal abuse.
Absolutely.
When I went to a national or international counseling conference last fall, I went to one workshop on the physical consequences of narcissistic and emotional abuse, and another one titled The Somatic Effects, somatic just being your body, the somatic effects of coercive control. And the teacher of the second one, she had a 199-page dissertation that I bought with all of her research showing the physical consequences of coercive control, of being in a power and control relationship.
Yeah.
And so that's something we really tend to miss. Yeah, I mentioned that when I was waiting on the church discipline situation, I was throwing up and stuff. I ended up with gastritis and esophagitis. One of the things that changed for me when I got out, interestingly, is my physical health's a lot better. Yeah. It's funny because if you remember from when we were together, so I have a chronic dizziness problem, which is for real. Okay, it is a diagnosable physiological problem. Like many of those things, exacerbated by stress.
Sure.
I haven't had it since I got out. And if I told you the things that have happened in my life the last 2 years, or 2 or 3 years, the losses that I've incurred and really devastation that had nothing to do with my marriage, but it's not been an easy 3 years.
Yeah.
But my health is better. I was doing a fitness class this morning, and it was really funny because I'm usually doing things with weights and all this. This was something I'd never tried before. And they actually had us essentially spinning. We were doing a lot of movement and a lot of spinning and everything. And I literally thought while I was doing this, I could not have done this like 4 years ago because it would have just set me off.
You couldn't do it.
And it didn't even faze me. So recognizing the physical effect is really important. You think, well, they're in physical danger. It's like, I had friends who said, Kathy, this is going to kill you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they were right.
And you and I have talked before about the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
The Body Keeps the Score.
With so much research in there that shows your body's going to react to it.
Yeah.
We're just wired that way.
Well, you're in hypervigilance the whole time.
Yeah.
And I could do the whole neurobiology thing on it, but just what so many people have heard, the stress responses of fight, flight, freeze. Fourth one, side note, that they're doing a lot more research on fawn, which is a little more developed, especially when those other things don't work.
Mm-hmm.
I shifted all of them. I started in fight, got called out on that.
That didn't work, right?
Yeah, so I did a lot of freeze, dissociation, but the fawn response, which is basically people-pleasing, no boundaries, to use a word we don't like to use, codependency is really what it comes down to, which there's super elements of that involved with abuse. I am being codependent with this person who is doing this.
Yeah.
Some of the other breakdown with the fawn responses, please and appease, submit. Does this sound a lot like what we tell a lot of Christian women?
Oh, yeah.
So you play right into it.
Right.
But the issue is that's necessary to mitigate a threat. We don't deal with the stress, we don't deal with the threat, we don't deal with the safety issue. Instead, we tell you to try and mitigate the threat, to try and appease the situation, to try and make it not so bad.
Survive.
Yeah, and survive.
But you're normally not.
Yeah, so we're not going with the safety issue. But your body, imagine your body being on a high alert all the time. And that's something interesting, too, that I had read about emotional abuse, was the fact that it happens so consistently. Sometimes people like to lock this in, and I get it. Everybody likes to have a real clear understanding of something, especially when it's murky. Like with physical abuse, there's sometimes that cycle of abuse where there may be that they may hit them or beat them or whatever, and then they may actually be apologetic. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's even like the flowers and the making up for it and everything. I'll never do it again, and then it just continues to happen. And so people hear that, and so I've been asked before about, what was the cycle of abuse like for me? It's like there was no cycle. It was just
ongoing.
Constant.
It was all the time.
Which is the norm with verbal and emotional abuse.
Right.
And you never know what's going to happen. So you are always on, if that person's around or may come home, your body's on high alert. So imagine if you're just tense the whole time.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. That's literally what you're doing. And it is killing you. The number one physical symptom I've heard of abuse is exhaustion.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and it is exhausting.
I had a lady tell me one time that every time in the evening when the garage door went up and she knew who was home, everything kicked in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your body.
Before he ever walked through the door.
Yep, because your body, we're gearing up.
Yeah, wow. So somebody's listening, watching this, and this has kind of touched them because they think they know someone who's been abused, but they don't know how to help. Is it ever appropriate to intervene without somebody asking you? Is intervention appropriate?
That's a great question. It really would depend on the situation. If you think they are in imminent physical danger, then you may need to do something, like come out, address the situation more directly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's kind of back to the same way it was with the way a victim begins to find their safe people. Yeah, you can step into someone's life as a safe person, and you can begin to learn more. they might share something that happened, and they may share it completely innocently because they don't realize it's wrong. And if you have the relationship, it is possible to say, can I give you my perspective on that?
Yeah.
Or even, can I offer you a different perspective? And just say something. But you enter with gentleness, not guns blazing.
Right.
And no, because generally you don't want to take choice away from a victim. You want to help them as they move forward with those choices, and you want to support them.
Because you're dealing with someone that's been traumatized,
Yeah.
and you don't want to come in and add to the trauma because you're, well, we're going to do this, this, and this. And
Yes,
or,
you come in like, just with all
it can be
your
overwhelming.
and not tell me everything that's happening.
Yeah.
Things like that. There was one situation where my husband had threatened me, and I had told a close friend of mine, and she said, if you don't tell the minister of discipleship, the person who she named him person,
Right.
but she said, if you don't tell him, I will. And I thought that was a great way to handle it.
Sure. Gave you the choice.
Yeah, if I'm really concerned, then it's like somebody needs to know this.
This is bad enough that if you don't, I
Yeah.
will.
And
I like that.
Yeah, I thought that was very well handled.